Our final award is a new one, and it honours women in their third quarter. It's sponsored by Olivia Henry Associates and designed to honour rule-breaking women aged 50 to 75 who deserve recognition and celebration. I thought, actually, along with the 3 finalists, this third quarter woman might form a girl band called the Third Quarterers. So let's cheer to the stage Bushra Ahmed, Jackie Cannon and Lisa Harper. Bushra, as a teenager growing up in London in the 1980s...
70s. Probably.
Sorry. Okay.
I am, yeah. I'm a 70s child.
Me too. You witnessed the devastating impact of racism very personally, and that's kind of shaped what you've done over the past decades. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened back then?
You know, we're all going through this again. I think history repeats itself, but we can see that, you know, I often say to young people, don't give up hope, because we have been through this before, and it was legal. So, you know, when my parents came over, they had the signs on the doors that said, you know, no coloureds, no dogs, no blacks, you know, and that was something that we had to face growing up. And then we had, well, when we were going to school, we had the skinheads and the Paki bashing, as it was called, and that was very real. And we had, you know, we're talking about marches now, but we had marches every week during, through our local shopping centres. And so we wouldn't go out, we just wouldn't go out. And I think having grown up with that, and then seeing my father, who was a politician, he was a campaigner, and he actually was working together with, you know, all the communities in solidarity, the Bangladeshi community, the West African community, the Caribbean community, and the Pakistani community, to kind of bring people together to challenge all of these things. And I think it was that generation that actually made the breakthrough for, you know, us to have all of the changes that we did in the laws that we had. And I think we're just, you know, we have that responsibility to keep their legacy alive.
What gave you the courage, though, as a teenager, in those circumstances, in that place, in that time, to do what you've done over the past 4 decades?
4 decades. I think you just get on with it. I think in those days we didn't have a choice. You know, our parents were just working really hard. I think they didn't ask us how we felt. You know, we just had to get on with it, and just, you know, deal with the situation that we had. We just went to school, saw immense amounts of racism, but just, you know, came through it with the knowledge that actually it was probably my faith and my parents' faith that kept us quite strong and kept us quite grounded in a way. And then when I finally kind of came into the campaigning world, which was when I turned 50, which makes me 65, because it was 15 years ago, when the riots happened in my local area and my shop was burned down, along with 9 other shops and 40 flats, it was that sense of, you know, everybody's talking about one element of Croydon, which is where I was, where, you know, a family had been affected, but here were many, many diverse families who were affected, Tamil shops, Indian shops, black-led shops, and nobody was talking about them. So I kind of felt it was my responsibility to step up, and also because within a very short time of the riots that happened in August, which was August the 8th, and we're coming up to that, the 15-year anniversary, both my parents then passed away very quickly within 2 months. So you have probate. So you've got a hole in the ground that is your shop, a family shop, and you have to sort it out. And so you have to step up and you just have to get on with it. And as we were fighting for that compensation, you know, I realised that I was going into rooms that I'd never been into, talking on TV, you know, talking to ITV, BBC, Sky. Never done that before. But you just step up. I think when you're forced to do something, you just do it. Because without that compensation, all of those people, we couldn't rebuild. And, you know, it took 3.5 years. But during that time, I learned so many lessons about how to campaign, how to break those barriers. I kept saying I paralysed resistance with persistence, because the systems are designed to crush you as a campaigner, and you come up against these barriers over and over again. So, you know, the whole world is being told that we've got our compensation and everything's okay. And there was all of us who were saying, no, we haven't. So just had to keep going. And eventually, 3.5 years later, got millions of pounds for the area. So we managed to, you know, get lots of that area rebuilt because it was also our local area. And there was a new school that had come in, and children were being told that you live in a dump. It's the place where the riots happened. Secondary school kids, you know, they needed pride in their area. And I think one of my biggest achievements was helping to rename the area Broad Green Village, which is the idea that it had been a village about 50 years ago, and that a village was giving us back a sense of community in the area. And we were part of the Big Local, which was a local trust initiative that had come into the area. So, you know, I was part of that, and through that we were able to kind of rename the area. I think seeing the influence that charities had on decisions that were being made, and realizing that actually at the top of these charities sat people who didn't understand our experience, was what then propelled me, after I got the compensation, to go towards you know, finding my way, hustling my way onto boards where there was no representation, where I felt there should be. And I think that's kind of started my journey into the charity sector, into the foundation sector, which is where I now am.
So do you think your age and your wisdom and your experience were an advantage?
I think definitely so, because, I mean, there's always that one person in the family who's called the bossy person. That was me. So, of course, I was the one who stepped up. I was the one who was doing all of this stuff. And I realized that, yeah, I was bossy, but with that came wisdom. So people were always asking me what they needed to do. I think when you're in a family of 8, you kind of give advice when it's not always needed. So I had to learn certain things about when you're in a boardroom. You have to rein yourself in, and you have to do more listening. And, you know, I think I was able to access, I was part of a program which was the Civic Future Leaders program that the GLA had just started just before COVID. And it was picking 25 people who were embedded in their community who were doing stuff. And we were given access to things like coaching and mentoring, stuff that we don't usually have access to because we couldn't afford it. And I think just having that kind of, you know, the mentoring and the coaching really helped to then focus me. And I got a 360-degree review through that that said, Bushra needs to stop focusing on this, and I was like, actually, that's quite true. And then it helps you to kind of think about where you need to go, because if you're a professional, you sometimes have access to this. If you've been to university, you know, you have this kind of training, but for me, because I was a young carer, I didn't go to university. So not having those things behind you, a degree or education or being a CEO or being in a charity or doing that kind of recognized work, because running a family business wasn't considered as work. It was just, you know, seen as nothing, actually, no skills, nothing. So I had to really battle against that to get into those rooms and to get into those boardrooms.
So you're a relative spring chicken in this third quarter.
Absolutely.
What's next? What's coming next?
Well, a couple of years ago, I decided that I wanted to go international. So I put myself out there, looked for opportunities, and I'm now the proud developer of a software, which is, you know, incredible at my age, not having, you know, had any training or anything. But I think that was really exciting for me, because it was like, you can do anything. And then this work that I'm doing now with the young people around climate change and sustainability with the Mercedes-Benz Foundation, which is called the Be Visioneers, coming across such incredible young people and realizing that actually that cross-generational work that you can do to impart some of our wisdom and what we've been through, to give them the hope that is currently very hopeless kind of scenario that they're in. And you can see it, that they're thinking, you know, there's no jobs, there's nothing. But actually, if they realize that they have the power to change, so building global collaborations between these, building global communities between these young people, and being that person that they can just kind of call on just for a bit of mentoring or just a bit of wisdom, that sometimes, you know, when you're working in the community as a young person, it's not always that your community will appreciate what you're doing. So somebody in Uganda who is, actually there's a young person in India who's working within her community to try and conserve the local animals, but it's not being appreciated because it's being seen as something that she's being told she should be ashamed of doing it, and her family don't support her. So, you know, when it comes to those kind of things, and if she has somebody like myself, which she said is, the only person that she can really can listen to her and give her that advice. I think that means a great deal. So, I offer my time to mentor these young people and
Thank you.
make a difference.
Great story. Thank you. So, welcome to Jackie Cannon. The script on the Inspiring Women website that I read yesterday about Jackie Cannon starts off, most people think of their 50s as a time to slow down. Can I just have a show of hands in this room? How many women are in their 50s or older? Oh, quite a few. How many of those women who've just raised their hands are slowing down? So, certainly not you, Jackie. Can you tell us what happened to you when you were 53 to redefine your third quarter?
Yes, so when I was 53, for 25 years, I'd worked in corporate, I'd worked in insurance, starting off in a building over there, National Insurance in St Mary's Parsonage. I'd worked for Royal Ellison Alliance, I'd worked for Accenture in consultancy, and then latterly at United Utilities in Warrington, helping to develop an IT system for when the business market split from the domestic market. I was that person at 3 a.m. testing it before all the customers went online, and it's still not working today. Before that, I was running the charity, the Lewy Body Society then, but whilst I was still working. And for people that don't know what Lewy body is, if you imagine the water jug on your table, and if you pour in a bit of Parkinson's, if you pour in a bit of Alzheimer's, stir it up, and you've got Lewy body. There's a list of 200 types of dementia. Lewy body is the third most common type on that list. 100,000 people in the UK are living with Lewy body symptoms. 50% of those people have either not got a diagnosis or they have been misdiagnosed with bipolar, with epilepsy. That means that those people start on a medication route which is totally inappropriate. Those people end up getting sectioned, getting stuck in the NHS system, and then going through a withdrawal process to remove that medication. Last year, I took 1,000 calls from families because the charity, we are a micro charity, it's myself and the trustees. I was just going to say something else, but I'll be preempting a question that's coming later. At 53, I decided I'd had enough of the corporate world and that I was going to become self-employed and be a consultant. The trustees said, as part of your consultancy journey, will you take over the charity full-time, take it to the next level, and bring some of your transferable skills? So we are now a member of AMRC, which is the Association of Medical Research Charities. We've currently funded 3.4 million, all through voluntary donations, into medical research across UK universities. We're currently going through a grant round now where we will be awarding another £500,000. I never thought that I would have my name cited on 30 academic papers working with UK universities, and that's happened in the third quarter.
You went from this pretty high-flying corporate life to almost kind of running a charity as such. What was your why Lewy body?
So Lewy body because my dad was diagnosed with Lewy body, and like most families, we have never heard of Lewy body dementia, and I think most families have never heard of it until they or a family member get that diagnosis. And it was more poignant because we were in the local hospital and we saw in A&E, and we saw 5 consultants and not one had heard of Lewy body. A junior doctor, or a resident doctor as they're now called, asked, was he an alcoholic? No. Quite close, Wigan. No, that's fine. And As was an alcoholic. And I thought, this is not going to happen to another family. So for the charity is 20 years old next month as a charity. We celebrate our registration with the Charities Commission on the 6th of June. A friend of mine started the charity because her mum saw 27 doctors before she got a diagnosis. And that was in the States. And then she asked me to take it over. And I took it over whilst working. And recently, I've helped to create Lewy body organisations in Ireland, France, Spain, Belgium, Australia. I'm now the Secretariat for Lewy Body International.
Fantastic. So there are quite a few post-50 ladies here today. How did you find the confidence, energy, drive to make that absolute change in your life in your 50s?
I think because when you've been in corporate so long, and I think when you've worked for companies like Accenture, for example, in consultancy, you learn a certain skill set. And one of the first things a project manager told me, who was from New York, actually said, stand up in this room and tell all these project managers why they should have you on their project. And yes, it was hard, but it gave me a skill set. And moving over to the charity full-time, and I work a lot as well with NIHR, which is the National Institute for Health Research, and the University of Liverpool on projects as a public advisor. And it gives me reason to get up in the morning, and it doesn't feel like work.
Fantastic, thank you. Lisa Harper. So,
hello, Joanne.
Before the serious stuff,
Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
How many hats have you got? How many pairs of specs have you got?
A lot.
Because I have never known you knowingly underdressed.
Well, I've got a lot. That's all I can say. A lot.
What happened to you in your kind of earlier quarter or your kind of start of your 3rd quarter to make you kind of change your whole persona, I think?
Okay, so bit of the backstory. Like you, I'm the youngest of 8 children. And I marvel at all the talent in this room, because when I was a little girl, I was told at school all the time, shut up, you talk too much. If you did this, you'd be so... And that gave me a lot of self-limiting beliefs as a child. And so when I became an adult, I didn't think I had a voice to have anything of importance to say. Anyway, coming back up to your question, Joanne, I'd always been quite outgoing, but when I got married, and I got married fairly young, I was in my 20s, 22 I think I was when I got married. I married a guy who was quite introverted, and when you're an extrovert with an introvert, you end up dampening yourself down. And along the way, for those years, I started to lose the person who was within me. Then I became a wife, I became a mother. I then worked with the Abbey National, all of these things, because I didn't go to university until I was 38. So the first 35 years of my life was pretty good. I'd got a family, had a pretty nice child. I mean, I hear some of the stories in this room and I think, God, why am I here? Because my childhood was I had quite a nice childhood in all honesty. But then, after 35 and sort of up to my 50s, I'd sort of progressed in my career and I'd started to take on education and my kids were growing older. But then I'd been made redundant a couple of times, At the end of the day, those things sort of happen. And you can feel down when you're made redundant, or you can step up and move on. And I always saw redundancy as a really great opportunity. In fact, the last settlement agreement I had, I built a very nice conservatory on the house. So... But I guess the crux of the point was, when I got divorced from my first husband, who was the love of my life, he was the father of my children, I was absolutely devastated. But I knew that I had to soldier on for my girls because I am their role model. I am the role model for my daughters and my granddaughters and all of us. And I have a mission that all of us in this room have to be role models for the children who come after us. That's our legacy, and that's what we must do. But in my 50s, I remarried in my late sort of 40s, and I knew things weren't right, and I felt that quiet shift. You know, your inner compass tells you a lot of stuff, and then that inner compass told me things weren't quite right. And then when I was 52, I was working for a small organisation. My background is human resources, so I love people. And I was working within a company, and I went for a routine mammogram. Now, how many of you, when you call for a routine mammogram, go? How many of you say, oh, I don't want to go, it's going to hurt? Yeah? Lots of women do that. And even in the population that sits in this room, you know, a lot of women still don't go for mammograms. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had no lump, no outward signs, nothing. It came as a real blow to be diagnosed with breast cancer at 52. Fortunately, it was stage 2 breast cancer. But it was breast cancer after all. And when I was listening to the lady earlier on about all the work she does for breast cancer, I applaud that. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And as a reason, I'm an advocate for prevent breast cancer. But I'll come on to that in a little while. Anyway, I got breast cancer and I thought, oh, God. Went through the treatment. I was the major breadwinner in the family. I couldn't take any time off work because I worked for a small company. No fantastic sickness scheme. So I worked all the way through it. But on reflection, that was a godsend for me. It didn't give me the chance to feel sorry for myself. I just cracked on and moved on. And I recovered, had all the treatment. And then at 54, my second husband took his own life. And that was absolutely catastrophic. And I can relate a story to inspiring women to this. I was sat in, not in this room, it was the Midland Hotel, the week after my husband first tried to commit suicide, and he survived. And I was sat in this room, and the lady who founded Papyrus, which is a charity for young men, because her own son had taken his own life, won one of the awards. And I sat in that room and I thought, my God, thank God. You know, thank God Jack didn't kill himself. And I was so in awe of this woman. No one knew in the room. And then a week later, he succeeded. And that was absolutely mind-blowing. Now, I had a decision. Well, I guess the turning point was when my youngest daughter, who was 22 at the time, said to me, Mom, Emma and I are really worried about you. And I said, worried, why? They said, Mom, we're worried you're going to do what Jack's done. And I said, darling, I fought 12 months to save my life. Why would I want to take it? I'm here for you. And at that moment, I decided I'd either got to be a victim or a victor. And I chose victory. And if you saw a picture of me on Instagram last week, of me when I was 54, I am unrecognisable. And so I went into personal development. I did a lot of personal development on myself. I studied NLP, if any of you know what NLP is. I did a lot of work on myself. I found meditation. I've been to Dr. Joe Dispenza retreats. And it's all about getting back to self. Because every one of us walks through life oblivious and thinks about everybody else, but you don't think of number one.
But you are thinking of other people now, Lisa, aren't you?
I am.
So tell us what you are doing to kind of give other people that energy that you've got.
So I work with people in midlife. And when I say midlife, I mean women of 45 plus. Because, trust me, girls, anti-aging, the opposite to anti-aging is death. You know, I'm all about positive aging with purpose. Sorry? Yeah. So, you know, positive aging with purpose, because I coach and mentor. I have a community. I know in the brochure it says my club is findyourtribe.club. I've rebranded. I'm now all about True North Circle. We're all looking for our true north, whatever it might be. So I'm not here to teach people how to grow old gracefully. I'm here to give people the opportunity to know that there's a lot more things to do with your life. You know, we're on this planet for a short space of time, if God gives you the grant you that time, but you're on this planet for a small amount of time. You've got to make the most of it.
What are you actually doing through that organisation?
So I run seminars, group sessions. I do one-to-one mentoring and coaching. I've got a community online called True North Circle, and I also run masterclass meets, networking groups locally in Sale. So I do quite a lot of stuff around community.
So apart from going out and buying a hat and a pair of specs, all the women who raise their hands, all the women in this room, what would you say to them about, you know, what should drive them to get out of bed in the morning and have the kind of energy and joie de vivre that you have?
That's a really good question, Joanne. I don't know. You've just got to have a purpose. If you have no purpose in life, you know, you might as well throw the towel in. We've talked to every person who has been on this stage has had a purpose of some sort, and you have to find your purpose, whatever that might be. My purpose is to leave a legacy that mentors other women and men if they're up for it, you know, but other women, that absolutely one has to live one's best life. And that's all I can say, really, Joanne.
So I think we'd all agree that through courage, honesty, and unwavering belief in the power of human connection, Lisa, Bushra, and Jackie are redefining what it means to grow older and proving that the third quarter of life can be the most powerful movement of all. So can I now ask for the unwavering organiser of the 34th Inspiring Women Awards, Jacqueline Hughes-Lundy, to come to the stage to announce the winner.
And the winner of this inaugural award is Lisa Harper.
Jacqueline just said the thing that never really happens to me. Do you want to just say a few words? Which isn't really good. Anyway, first of all, can I just thank Inspiring Women Awards for this prestigious award. Honestly, I'm absolutely dumbstruck. The story, in fact, I sat at that table this today and had total imposter syndrome. Why the hell am I here? Such fantastic, phenomenal women. So, all I would say to you ladies, I'm 72, and I am not ashamed to say I'm 72. And I describe my life as a symphony in 3 movements. The first 35 years, the second 35 years. I'm planning now to go on for the next 35 years. So if you want to join the ride, follow me.